Ms. Pickren?
I would just like to say that I'm very thankful for Academy wanting to service children in the Fifth Ward. I think there's been lots of discussion around the school districts that do provide services in that area, and I think there is a need for all children deserve a great education. And so I'm just thankful that the commissioner and the agency has taken upon themselves to ensure that all Texas laws are followed to make sure that every child receives a great education, and that this is going to provide excellence and academic rigor. So kudos to the agency for doing this, and thank you to Up Academy for wanting to provide options to parents.
Any other discussion from members? Dr. Bell-Meadorow, then Mr. Maynard.
I would like to also thank the proposers of the school for their efforts, and I acknowledge the need, but I am concerned and just want to know the concern about teacher salaries, especially for bilingual and special education teachers. I don't know how they will get those teachers, and on the personnel chart, it shows that the teachers will receive supplementary teaching, bilingual and ESL, and then they've listed Teachers of Tomorrow, Texas Teachers of Tomorrow. I want to know if they are aware that the certification program has been recommended for closure, and are there other alternative certification partners that would be considered? I'm just worried about this issue of having qualified teachers in this school.
Okay, I've got Mr. Maynard, then Ms. Childs.
Well, just before I get to my comments, administrators that run schools know about alternative certification programs because there are many of them. It's my recollection that there was also a grant that was in play to provide supplemental funding to close that gap on salaries. And I will say that when I was on the school board in Florence, we had difficulty sometimes competing salary-wise with surrounding school districts, but we were able to provide a different experience for our teachers because we were a smaller school. And so there were people that would take a little bit of a pay cut to come to a school where still our big problems were kids chewing gum in the hallway, and versus some of the problems that they had in some of the bigger school districts. They had more money, but you earned every penny of it over there, And so I think that there's something to be said for that. And I will tell you that I know teachers that are teaching in some of those surrounding school districts that would probably take a little less to go teach in that environment, because just to get out of the, for lack of a better word, maybe the bureaucracy. And so, but let me say that I think that there were certain things in this application that gave me a little bit of pause, and I tried to find a way to kind of, to find those things, and I will say that's not a perfect application. Look, I mean, it's you get to this process and you've got to have a strong application, but I think at the end of the day, you've just got to weigh out certain things. And at the end of the day, we've got to make decisions based on students and student outcomes. And anytime that you work in education, you've got to have a sense of urgency. Every year that passes, that student doesn't get that year back. We owe our students the best shot that we can give them. The best shot we can get them every time. And I know that there are, these, kids that, I know we're supposed to call them scholars or students, but they're kids. And And sometimes is that when you read some of these things, is that you get a little bit of a sense that there's this kind of this culture of victimization. I get it. I was there. This is not a black or white or brown issue. This is just an issue of socioeconomics. You know, I grew up in an institution. There's a lot of those kids that I grew up with that thought the system was rigged against them because that was their perception based on their experience. And how you address that is that you empower those kids with knowledge and skill, and you give them the opportunity to experience certain things, and you can fade those things. You can overcome that. And, you know, the framers of the 1876 Constitution, when they talked about the public free schools, they talked about the orphans and the indigents and how education is an equalizer. And these kids in the Fifth Ward, they need that. And there's been some discussion. Well, you know, you could have another big charter school come in there and, you know, and plant a campus there or something like that, or, you know. But here's the thing: people in Fifth Ward are fiercely loyal. There's a sense of identity there. It's the difference between planting a Dollar General versus people getting together and supporting a locally owned store that's owned by one of their own. That's what we have. One of their own. Someone who gets it, who grew up there. The DNA of that community is in this school leader. And I know I've heard some things about it. Well, you know, she came out of a school, some school districts that have been labeled as failing and all that kind of stuff. Let me tell you something. My daughter-in-law taught at a school that was labeled as failing. She's a great teacher. She was a great teacher. I will tell you that the school that she taught at, her last year teaching on that campus, on this failing school, there were 5 children who were murdered in the course of that year. Those kids had drive-by shootings the day before they took the standardized assessment. There was a child that was literally abandoned by her parents on the steps of the school. That's what they were dealing with. I think that was a failing school, or that was a failing community. And the school is simply a reflection of that. And that's not to say that every person who teaches or leads in a school that's been labeled that way, they're incompetent. That's a falsehood. And I would urge you not to take that. I agree, is that if, you know, I think you have to be careful how you proclaim that when you're like, well, I'm from this school. Like, I don't know if that's a great recommendation, you know, I proclaim that. But be careful with that, because is that how that school accountability system works, you know, sometimes is that how that accountability system, we tend to evaluate a track coach based on their slowest runner, you know. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the track coach can't coach track, you know. So I think on the balance for me, just in terms of student outcomes, is like I think that we need to support this school and support this effort. I appreciate the fact that, and by the way, I have a long-standing relationship with Prairie View A&M and with the Dean of Agriculture over there, and they are partnering with Prairie View A&M. You heard from one of the regents for Texas Southern, and to not only to give these kids a great education, but instead of a pipeline into the Department of Corrections, we're trying to create a pipeline into higher education. And so I think that we have an opportunity to provide these students and these parents a choice, more importantly, provide them some hope. And I would urge you to support this school. Thank you.
And Ms. Childs next. All right, Mr. Francis, Mr. Kinsey, Ms. Brooks.
Ms. Davis, I have my hands up.
Francis, do you have a discussion?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Chairman, this is one of the applications that I thought a lot about. I thought things like what the impacts could be to children, the opportunities that they could have if this charter were to gain an approval from the State Board of Education or not. Again, it's no surprise I went on record saying that I did have significant concerns with specifically two areas, curriculum and leadership. I pressed on those two issues because my philosophy is it's always okay to ask tough questions, but there are no surprises, and that's how I intend to govern. When I won election for this position, you know, I want my constituents to not only know that I'm going to represent their interests, but also be consistent in what I say that I'll do. I would say that through the contingency process, I went through it with fidelity. I tried to ensure that there would be things to support this application. I felt like those needs, as how I see it, were met. I also wonder to, you know, just the impact that we have here in this boardroom, and obviously this is a political process, and you know it takes each member something different to get to that point. So the other thing I always say as well is that we shouldn't be sacrificing the means to the end, because the end is to ensure that students receive a good education, and whatever we need to do to ensure that, that's what we need to do. Our political landscape requires us to look at different things when we arrive at those questions and how we answer to get to a comfortability to support an application, or with anything, even in how we govern when we're in our districts. These are things that we should and I look for when I'm talking to constituents. So, you know, just to say that I am pleased at where we're at right now in terms of this application. And I've never been to the Fifth Ward, but not sure how this vote will go. But if this school is chartered, I'd love to be at the groundbreaking. Thanks.
Mr. Kinsey, Ms. Brooks, and Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Wednesday, I was on the fence on this school. I voted against it. I had some concerns. I listened to the concerns that were brought up all around this circle by board members with varying expertises that we bring to the table. I think when I look at it and the place we've gotten with the contingencies, we've addressed those. And so I asked myself, why do I like this school? Well, one thing we haven't talked about in this discussion right now is entrepreneurship, and that's what this school is about. And it is in a struggling socioeconomic area, but we know that if we give them the skills to succeed, that's the best way to pull yourself up out of poverty. My personal belief is not through government programs. My personal belief is that when you teach people how to succeed in the economy and how to create value, that is the way forward for us as a society. Member Maynard, I appreciated his speech earlier. He mentioned the testimony the other night. So Dr. Richard Johnson was here from Texas Public Policy Foundation, TSU, happens to be one of the people I admire the most in the education space. I've known him for a few years now, and I called him about the school. Because as Member Maynard said, being from the Fifth Ward matters. And Dr. Johnson, he grew up there too. And I wanted to know, would he support this? Not support it and say, yeah, I'll be there. But would he personally take an interest in this school going forward and ensuring that it's successful, that it's aligned with the values that many of us share around this circle. And he committed to me that he will take that personal interest to be there, not just to say this, to get things over the line, that he will develop those relationships and ensure that it succeeds. So I think this has been I think we have a great opportunity here. A great opportunity to create new pathways for people who didn't necessarily have them for young kids. And I would encourage everyone to support this charter.
Ms. Brooks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wholeheartedly agree with Member Maynard, which is why I support all of the solutions that were presented this week through the eyes and lens of a charter school. And if we apply these solutions to our public education, I believe we can give all 5.4 million of our school children a quality education.
Ms. Davis?
Thank you. I'm listening to the discussion, but I'm listening to the discussion, but I have a lot of issues with what's being said. It's over and over. I'm hearing the theme that Fifth Ward, there's no opportunities, there's no choice. School to prison pipeline. The schools are terrible. There's nothing there. The schools in that area, 91% are A and a B, and that's charter and ISD. There are lots charter and ISD. There are lots of choices. We know that area is becoming saturated. There is so many choices. And we discussed the fact that a lot of those schools in that area aren't even at capacity, nowhere near it, because the interest is not there. It's not because the building is too small or anything like that. It's because the parental interest is not there. The schools that are there are highly functioning. So if you are highly functioning. So if you do care this much, as each of you have said, you want to do something about the school to prison pipeline, I encourage you to work with those A and B schools that exist. But continuously dumping more and more and more schools into that one area is not a solution. Because if it was a solution, we wouldn't be here having this discussion. So if we want to do something about that area, like each of you have genuinely said, we need to figure out what's going on with the schools while they are successful, and then just increase that model. But putting more and more and more and more schools in that one area that is very saturated, it's not a solution to anything. And I think it's disrespectful to the teachers and the schools that have worked so hard, in that area to address these issues, to now say there is no choice, we have to have this school because there is no choice, because that's simply not true. So if we look at the facts, 91% of the schools in that area are an A or a B. Then the discussion that you're having about the kids don't have anything, that's not true. That's not true.
Go back to Ms. Childs and Ms. Pickering.
So for those of you that don't know, I'm a court-appointed attorney, right? So Harris County pays me to represent indigent clients, people that can't afford attorneys, right? I have about 200 clients. Majority of them are about 17 to 25 years old. Almost half of them are from Fifth Ward when I ask them where they're from. That is very disheartening to see that, especially with people that look like me from Fifth Ward. They have apathy towards school. And this school to prison pipeline is not just a buzzword or a buzz phrase. I literally live it every day that I go to work, right? Seeing those students come from Houston to Austin is important. They are excited about this school. They are excited about Up Excellence. Bringing Up Excellence to Fifth Ward is not a slight to Dogan or to Atherton Elementary. I've been to all those schools. They are doing some good work in Fifth Ward. We don't want to paint this picture that, oh, woe is me to Fifth Ward. That's not what's happening. There is pride in that community. This community used to be a place where business and entrepreneurship was thriving. That's why this proposed superintendent is trying to bring that back. But this school to prison pipeline thing is literally happening in the Fifth Ward. And I think this could be a small answer. It's not the answer. That's not the point of charter schools. But it could be a small answer. Seeing those parents here, we're talking a lot about parent autonomy and choice. There were parents in the audience the other day hoping that we pass this. We say we're about parents, then we need to uphold it. There were business owners in the audience. There was an attorney. In fact, the attorney that gave me my first job, I couldn't even believe that she came. Erica Childs, no relation. She came. She supports Up Excellence. She's a business owner in the community. This is the right thing to do for students in that community. I live in Third Ward, right down the street. I see what happens every day when kids are not excited about school. The proof is in the pudding. This is not about being a Republican or a Democrat or connections. This is about what's good for kids. And we talked about this application wasn't perfect. No application was perfect, let's be clear. Even Celebrate Dyslexia Schools had a violation of the law in their application, and they passed 13-1 today because it's good for kids. No, their application wasn't perfect, but they can rectify their application, and they can provide something good for students. So I don't mean to get emotional. You know, I haven't been talking that much since I've been on the board, but I really feel strong about the proposed superintendent. She's turned around schools. She's worked in that area. She's from that area. The board that she selected is good. And people are excited and ready for this. And I hope that your votes represent that.